Hello everybody and welcome back to Natalie Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about the top books that are on my Fantasy TBR. These are the fantasy books that I am hopefully going to pick up next. Now, while I say I want to pick these up next, and I will try to pick these up next, I don't know if that's actually going to happen. I'm in the middle of a school year that isn't very forgiving to fantasy readers. I don't have a whole lot of time or the brain power sometimes to read an extremely long and dense fantasy book. So if I don't get to these before the end of the school year, which I know I won't get to all of them, but will I even get to some of them? I don't know. But these will also be the ones that I'll be aiming to get to during the summer. So let's get started in going through the list. The first book series I want to get to is to continue The Wheel of Time. This series by Robert Jordan is one of the longest fantasy series ever. It's 14 or 15 books long, and it's extremely popular but also extremely dense. So I have technically read the first 2 books in the series, but I think I may actually have to read the second book in order to continue. Not much stuck with me. Unfortunately, when I read the second book, I was more focused on getting it done and completing it rather than actually absorbing the information that happened. So I did also try to start the third book in January, I believe, but I A, didn't remember a whole lot from the second book, and B, just didn't have the time or brain power to fully invest myself in that third book. So this, I think, is just going to be a series that's going to have to wait until the summer. But I do want to continue because I was enjoying what I've read of it so far. It's just very intimidating because it's 14 books long. Next one is one that I think I'll be able to get to sooner because I think it's a more faster paced read, but I'm not quite sure how dense it is, and that is Rune of Kings by Jen Lyons. I have heard so many amazing things about this first book and this entire series recently from a bunch of different booktubers that's honestly made me really excited to get to it because I'd seen it at like Barnes & Noble's before and read the back of it and thought like, oh, that sounds interesting, but I had never heard anyone talk about it until recently, and now everyone's like reading it and loving it, and I'm excited. I want to know what all this hype is about. So I know this book is about a boy named Kieran who I think was destined to ruin the Empire, and it's him telling his life story to someone. But I also know there's someone who's like interrupting him and also telling the story along with him, so I'm not really quite sure how that works out. But I know there's like some prophecy that surrounds him, and I think there's dragons and also alternate timelines and reincarnations, so the family trees are kind of complicated. But honestly, I'm just really excited to read this book because despite how complicated it is, I've heard almost nothing but good things, so I'm really excited to read it. I think it's going to be very political, and I'm intrigued, and if it has dragons, I'm sure I'll love that. Next is one that I initially really wanted to read, I think last spring, and I just never got around to it, but I still really want to read it, and that's Sword of Kragan by Emma L. Wang. So the pitch that I've heard that really appeals to my soul with this book is it's Avatar: The Last Airbender meets the Poppy War. So last year I watched Avatar for the first time and I absolutely adored it. And the Poppy War is my favorite adult fantasy series. Actually, I think it's just my favorite series in general. So like the mix of the two together sounds so good. I think it's going to have the darkness of the Poppy War but the magic of Avatar, which just makes me so intrigued. So I believe we're following this young boy who lives in kind of a more secluded empire, and he's fighting to protect his empire when they're invaded, and we're following his mother who used to be a fighter but then had set away her life, but now with these invaders is fighting again, and it's like the story of them and also their life, I guess. I don't know, but it sounds really interesting, and honestly I just needed the pitch of the Poppy War meets Avatar. I know at some point last year this book was on Kindle Unlimited. I'm not sure if that's still true. But if it is, it definitely means I'll be getting to it sooner than if not. So let's all hope for Natalie's sake that it is still on Kindle Unlimited. So I don't know, the next one may be kind of stupid to put on this list because it's an unfinished series. We have no idea when it's gonna get finished, and it's a bunch of long books, but like I'm still interested in it, so I'm gonna put it on this list, and that's Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin. So I'm interested in this because I like political fantasy. This is more on the darker side, which I have discovered that I do like, and everyone seems to enjoy this series, at least, and I'm interested to know what the plot is. Now, I know I can never watch the TV show right now. I guess I don't want to say never, but like I couldn't watch it right now. I think it would be way too violent for me, but I think I should be fine reading the violence because I've never had an issue with that. It's just when I watch violent stuff that I have issues. So I think if I read this series, it should be fine. I'm really interested to know what it's about because you hear all this stuff about Game of Thrones and how divisive it is. People like the TV show, people like the books, people hate the way the TV show ended, and then the constant talk about when is the series gonna get ended, and that just makes me go, I want to read that. Because I'm strange, apparently. But I am interested. I know it's about, like, a family that's all messed up and, like, they're fighting for who's gonna win the throne or something. There's dragons in it, which I love dragons, so that speaks to my soul. And I'm just really interested in it. I also think the world's gonna be really cool because I think it's a more icy, wintry setting, which I do also enjoy. So I want to read this series, and I'm going to. It's going on the list. This may actually be one that I get to before the end of the school year, but I don't know. It feels like in my soul one that I want to get to sooner rather than later. The fifth book, and another one that's incredibly stupid of me to start because it's such a long series, and I don't need to start this when I'm in the middle of so many other series, but I want to, and that's my reasoning is I want to. And that series is The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. So this series is technically, I think, 4 series, I want to say. No, I think there's actually 5 of them. 4 of the 5 are trilogies, and then 1 is 4 books long, but like those books are shorter than the ones that are trilogies. I know 3 of the series follows Fitz, and the other 2 follow like other characters and are more multi-perspective than the Fitz books. But basically what I know about Fitz is he is the bastard son of a king who is raised by his grandfather, but eventually his grandfather decides, I don't want to raise you anymore, and drops him off at the castle. But his father, when he hears that Fitz is coming back, decides to abdicate the throne, which leaves Fitz in a strange position where he is technically royalty, but also technically not. So he is trained to be an assassin and a spy. I've heard almost nothing but good things about Robin Hobb. Everyone loves her books, whether they love the Farsi books or they love the other books in the series. Everyone just loves her and says she's such a great writer. She makes you feel for her characters. She's so emotionally impactful. And I do know the Fitz books are a bit slower, and in general her books are a bit slower, so I don't know how that bodes for me reading them now, but I don't think that'll be a problem because I'm so interested in, I think if she's able to create characters that I truly do care about and would die for, it shouldn't be a matter if the books are a bit slower and if they're not as plot driven. But I'm so excited to read these books. I've heard almost nothing but good things about them, and I just want to read them now. I actually almost started reading them in December, but I decided to hold off and not to, and now I'm kind of regretting that decision, but I'm also kind of not, given how sporadic my reading has been these last 4 months. It's probably better that I didn't start this huge series. But now that I'm in a bit better of a position, maybe not. Another one that is absolutely huge, but a little bit less intimidating because it's not a series, it's a standalone, is Friar of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, which is another one that has dragons in it. Maybe there's a theme here that I like dragons or want to read books about dragons, but this is one that is slightly less intimidating because while it is 800 pages, the part of it is a glossary, and it is just one book. The text in it is not tiny, it's fairly well sized. So yeah, I've owned this book for about a year, I think now, slightly over a year maybe, but I've never really felt this strong calling to pick it up until more recently, where I'm like, I think this could be really good. I'm also interested in Samantha Shannon's other work, The Bone Season, but I'm less inclined to pick that up now because I think I will absolutely adore it, but it's being published very, very slowly, and so like with this one, it's already completed. I know a sequel is coming, but like this is a standalone, so I'm not waiting for anything else. Like this will give me a satisfying conclusion on its own. I'm a bit more inclined to pick this one up compared to The Bone Season. I also know this has sapphic people in it, which, you know, representation, always great. I'm not 100% sure what this book is about. I know it has dragons, and I know I love dragons. But I know we're following like 3 different characters. One's a queen, and I don't know who the other 2 are. And then also like warring kingdoms that are causing chaos. So who knows? I think this one will be dense, and there's going to be a lot of world building in it because it is just one book, so all the world building needs to happen in this book along with the plot. But you know, I'm still excited. I've heard pretty good things about this one. I think people do tend to like The Bone Season more, but this is a pretty well respected book, So I am excited to see how much I enjoyed this book. So it is going on the list. Another one that I own and I'm less intimidated by because they're shorter books and it's only a trilogy is The 100,000 Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin, which is part of the Inheritance trilogy. Like, this book is only 400 pages long. Not intimidating at all to me, except for the fact that it is written by N.K. Jemisin, who I do find intimidating. So I don't know a lot about this book, so I'm going to read it from the back of it. Yin Dar is an outcast from the barbarian north, but when her mother dies under mysterious circumstances, she is summoned to the majestic city of Sky. There, to her shock, Yin is named as heiress to the king, but the throne of the 100,000 Kingdoms is not easily won, and Yin is thrust into a vicious power struggle. So that doesn't give me, like, much information, but I think this has a lot of gods in it. And I feel like I've heard that, like, each book follows a different character, but I could also be completely making that up. But I know a lot of people really like this book. It's, I think, one of N.K. Jemisin's more popular series. Like, the 5th season is obviously her most popular series. It's the most well-known. But I think after that, it's this one that the most people like besides that one. So I'm hoping this one will be more accessible than the 5th season, which just, like, scares me for so many reasons. But this one's shorter, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it because, I don't know, I just feel like I will. And I'm really excited to read something by N.K. Jemisin. So this is on the list of books I really want to read. I feel slightly strange putting this next one on the list because I have technically read it, and I read it really recently, but to continue on with the series, I'm going to need to reread it. And that is Jade City by Fondelier. So I read this book in January, so I haven't talked to you guys at all about my thoughts in it. But I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought the world was immersive, the magic was amazing, and the characters were really interesting. However, this was another one where I was forcing myself to get through it instead of just taking the time to fully absorb the book. And unfortunately, very quickly after I finished it, I no longer remembered enough to where I could continue on with the series. And I do want to continue on with this series because I absolutely love this, and I have no doubts that the second and third books in the series will be some of my favorite books. I think this series could be a new favorite series, but I need to give it the time and the attention it deserves. I can't just half-ass my way through it. This book mainly follows one family that lives in this place where, the city, Jade City, where there's 2 gangs that rule the cities, and they're in this clan war basically over Jade. We're following 4 siblings of the Call family as they're trying to navigate this crazy world that they're living in, where they're navigating the trade of Jade as well as outside influences. And basically the catalyst of this novel is, so usually only people from this island can use Jade, and they're known as Greenpoint warriors, but the outside world is starting to produce a drug that synthetically allows other people to use Jade, which could be detrimental to this island because it's kind of their one advantage they have is their ability to use Jade. So I absolutely adored this book, and I'm excited to reread it. It does slightly intimidate me to reread it because it was, like, so emotional, and, like, this book destroyed me somewhat, but I think I'm going to really enjoy it. So I don't know when I'm going to get to this one, but I definitely do want to reread it. One that I am in the middle of but will definitely need to restart is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. So I was so excited to read this book when it came out. I pre-ordered it. It came to my door. I didn't pick it up immediately. About a week and a half after it did come out, I did finally pick it up. I read half of it, and then I stopped. Life was a bit crazy when I was reading this book, and I just didn't have the time and energy I felt that I could fully devote to this. And this wasn't something that I wanted to not fully devote my time into it, because I feel like this will be a favorite book of mine. I absolutely adore Crescent City. I reread it this year, and it was still amazing. And I just felt like I wasn't giving this book my full attention because it's introducing a lot of new layers and levels to the plot, and I want to be able to fully absorb them. So I am 392 pages in, but I will be restarting it whenever I get back to this because I need to fully give this book and its characters my full attention. This is the sequel to House of Earth and Blood, which is the first book in the Crescent City series, which is Sarah J. Maas's first adult fantasy series. Well, first series it's being branded as adult fantasy. I would say ACOTAR is adult. Well, it's more new adult, but, like, that doesn't really exist in the publishing world. So it should be published as adult, but it's more commonly published as YA. But, like I said, this is her first, like, actual adult series. And in the first book, we follow Bryce Quinlan, who is a party girl. She's more laid back, relaxed, is here for a good time, and then something horrible happens, and it completely disrupts her life. Like, a year and a half later, a string of murders are happening, and she gets asked to look into them, and she's assigned a bodyguard who's gonna look after her, and that's Han Athalar, who is a fallen archangel, and tensions fly between the two of them, and it's about Bryce's investigation into this and also her grieving process and their relationship, and it's absolutely fabulous and one of my favorite books of all time, and I'm so excited to read the sequel, but I need to restart. I don't remember enough to continue going from where I was. So the final book that's on this list is one that only really recently came to my attention, and that's because the Broken Binding did a special edition for this series, and it was the most beautiful books I have ever seen in my entire life, and that is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. So do I know anything about this series? Absolutely not. Do I know that the books, and I'll put a picture of them up, are absolutely gorgeous, and honestly that makes me want to read them because, like most readers, I am totally influenced by beautiful editions that come out of books. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't really know anything about this book, so I will read you all the Goodreads synopsis of it. Willie charming Kuni Guru, a bandit, and stern fearless Mata, the son of a deposed duke, seem like polar opposites. Yet, in the uprising against the emperor, the two quickly become the best of friends after a series of adventures fighting against vast conscripted armies, silk-draped airships, and shape-shifting gods. Once the emperor has been overthrown, however, they each find themselves the leader of two separate factions, two sides with very different ideas about how the world should be run and the meaning of justice. So I believe this is a trilogy. Oh, it's actually 4 books. Interesting. So it's a 4-book series. And I know they're bigger books, so that does intimidate me. I feel like they're going to be really good. And based on the editions, like, good books get beautiful editions. I feel like that should be a rule of thumb. Especially because, like, these editions were made after the book came out, so they wouldn't make beautiful editions for books that had already come out and weren't very good. That's probably really bad logic, but it is the logic that I am going to use, and I'm going to read these books and hopefully adore them. So those were 10 books / series that are on my priority fantasy TBR. These are the books I am most looking forward to getting to and will hopefully read soon, if not during the summer. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Down below will be links to all the books I mentioned, as well as my Goodreads and my Instagram if you want to follow me there. Subscribe to see more content from me, and I will see you all again in my next video very soon. Bye!